I think that when we were younger, we may have put ourselves in boxes that were too small for the dreams that we have. And I think that there is an opportunity for us to go beyond that. Like, there's no reason that I can't have a hit record.
So Mike King, thanks for being here.
I mean, what am I do? Say no? Nah, thanks for having me. I was thinking about this, like, you have caught me at certain points in my evolution as a person, right? Like, the first interview I think we did at like the art museum stairs, not like the main art museum, the other joint. And I was just talking about how amazing I was, which is still true. And then you came through when we were recording Iconic.
Right.
And obviously this.
So the first one that you're referring to was like 2011.
Yeah.
That's when I had like the handheld run and gun cam, and it was based off of like one question, what inspires you? I may have asked you like a total of 3 or 4 questions.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I was just like, I'm just inspired to be better than anyone else.
Yeah. The second time was you had a studio session.
Mm-hmm.
Chief Camachi was there.
Yeah. I mean, that's when I was getting back into recording. And, you know, when I'm up here in Brooklyn, like, I got my kids, I got my business. So I was like, let me go back to Philly and carve out a huge block of time to really immerse myself in it. And so I was booking like the whole week and just knocking joints out. And yeah, I mean, you know, I think that's like ideal so you can just stay in that state of mind. With some of the upcoming stuff that I'm doing, we're probably just gonna book like a whole week in like Circle House in Miami. So we can just be like in that context and just enjoying things, feeling good, partying a little bit, and just being in the studio like a work day. You know what I mean? I really enjoy doing it that way where it's like I don't have to think about anything else but the records I'm making.
You grew up in North Philadelphia.
Yep.
How would you describe your childhood?
I mean, I think there's a lot of the similar tropes that you hear from a lot of 80s kids, you know, like grew up in the hood. But, you know, I didn't know that I was in the hood. Like, it's just, my context was my family and just getting a lot of love from people, you know? And I didn't really understand what we didn't have until we started getting things. Like, I remember a lot of times I would, you know, go with my grandmother to go downtown, to go shopping. And, you know, there'd be things that I wanted, but it wasn't like, oh, I have to have this or, you know, my life isn't gonna work or something. But there was one specific time when I was in first grade and I had these sneakers from Payless, and they were called the XJ9000s. And they were black sneakers, and it was my first day at school, and we had gym, and they marked up the floor. And the gym teacher, his name was Mr. Plato, I'll never forget this guy. He made me clean up the floor. Like, he made me clean up all the streaks on the floor. And then, so my mom, she was mortified. She was like, we gotta pay to get him some real sneakers. And so then I think my grandmother took me downtown to get these Air Zoom flights. They were Nikes. I was so hype about them. But I didn't understand that was a function of being poor. It was just like, oh, I had the wrong sneakers. I'm gonna get better sneakers. So that was very much what my life was like growing up, like not knowing there was more that we could have. And my parents, they had me like after they graduated from college. So both of my parents went to UPenn. And, you know, like my mom, like she literally had me when she was 22. So they were on this upward trajectory. But my parents also weren't together. You know what I mean? They weren't like married or anything like that. And so a lot of it was like me growing up with my mom's family in North Philly. And I was the first boy in the family. So like, you know, I was very well protected, meaning that I wasn't allowed to like leave the steps unless I told somebody. I couldn't go to my friends' houses, even though we lived in the same block. Like I had to get permission for that. I had to get permission to go across the street, like things like that. Like I couldn't go to the rec, which is like the park a few blocks like around the corner from us. I wasn't allowed to go there unless one of my uncles would take me. So, you know, even though I was in the hood and I saw some things that you would see growing up in the hood, I wasn't like in those things, you know what I mean? And so even with all that, I was always considered like really smart. And my mom was always pushing me to get these opportunities. So my mom, she got a scholarship to go to Friends Select, which is, you know, this like, it's a Quaker school in Philadelphia, private school, and you get like a really high-end education going there. And that's how she ended up getting the opportunity to go to Penn and all that other stuff. So she was adamant that I was also capable of those things. So I went to a school downtown called Greenfield Elementary, which was considered like a really good school. And then I tested into a program called MG, or Mentally Gifted. And so my mom was like, nah, this kid, he's smart. Because they tested me one time, and I talk about this on the song Made It. They tested me one time, and I think I missed it by like 2 points or something like that, whatever the score was. And my mom was like, nah, test them again. And then I passed it or whatever, and then they put me in the program. So, you know, like it was somewhat sheltered experience for me growing up, and also being pushed towards like academics and things like that. But you know, I'm like, I still grew up in that culture, right? Like I remember in '87, we had like a block party. I was 6, and I remember like It Takes Two was the record. The Fabulous Life. I may be getting like the timeline wrong or whatever, but I remember these records just like playing all over Philly, and like It Takes Two was like my favorite song. I was doing the Running Man, but I was a really bad dancer. Like I remember just being on the block in the summer, doing all those sorts of things, playing like king ball with my friends, and we would play football like between 2 telephone poles. You know, all like the stereotypical things that kids, like black inner city kids did in the 80s. That was me. That was how I grew up. And I also remember like my first hip hop concert. I think this was '88. It was in Penn's Landing, on Penn's Landing. I don't even remember what we say. And it was Public Enemy and EPMD. And I think Public Enemy went before EPMD, and EPMD was late, and everybody's like throwing bottles and all this. And my mom took me, and she's like, "Oh, we got to get you out of here." Like that was my experience. Like I like teetered into certain things, but my mom was like always trying to protect me from where there was potential danger with things.
What was your relationship like with each of your parents?
I mean, I'm super close with my mom even to this day. And my dad just wasn't around a lot when I was growing up. Like I have like flashes of memories from when we lived in West Philly on like 44th and Powelton or whatever. And, you know, I just remember him being around then, but then there's like a lot of gaps where he wasn't there, you know? And so my dad's from New York, right? And so I've been coming to New York since I was a kid, like a real little kid. Like they would just drop me off up here with my grandparents or whatever. And so like as much as Philly is a part of my DNA, like literally, New York is too. Like I was always back and forth. And so, yeah, I would see him, you know, every once in a while. At one point we lived downtown in Philly. And I remember a couple of times he would like come to the crib, and you know, I was really into video games. I'd be like, "Dad, play, you know, Mario Brothers with me." He wasn't all that interested. But I think with both of my parents, they were just trying to figure it out. They were trying to figure out like how to build these careers when they've had these huge opportunities that no one in their families respectively had. Like, I don't know if they were the first to graduate college on either side, but they were the first ones to be like big successes. And, you know, just being really young, it was probably really difficult for them to figure out what to do when you've got this brand new kid.
Do you remember who your heroes were when you were young and what you wanted to be when you grew up?
So, I mean, a lot of my heroes were rappers. Like Rakim was incredible to me at that age. Like LL Cool J was incredible. But again, a lot of this came from my dad, because my dad, he's from uptown, so like he grew up with hip hop. And, you know, he would always get the $5 tapes up in the Bronx, you know, the bootlegs or whatever. So we had everything. And yeah, I was just really into rappers at that time. And what I wanted to be when I grew up, the first dream I had was to be a cartoonist. Like I thought I was gonna draw comic books and things like that, which I did like as a kid. And then I wanted to make video games. So that's how I got into coding at a young age.
You mentioned your great-grandmother scared you, and it took you until you were 15 to ask her what she meant when she would call you the chosen one.
Yeah. So, you know, like so my family's from down south, right? And there's always that like, what's the word for it? I don't even know what the word is for it, where it's like people just kind of believe in these like ethereal things. Like it's kind of like these like prophecy sort of things, you know what I mean? And so yeah, she always scared me because she was really old. And it was like she was kind of this ghost that lived in the crib with us. And, you know, like there was just, you can't relate to someone that's that old when you're that young. So yeah, she had said that I was the chosen for our family. And I didn't know what she meant by that, you know what I mean? I just knew that like people in my family treated me like I was special. And when I finally asked her, you know, it wasn't like, you know, like I'm in Game of Thrones and I'm like gonna bring all the thrones together or whatever. It was something benign, like you're chosen to do right by God or something like that. Which was like, okay, isn't everyone chosen to do that? But, you know, she was like 102 when I asked her that. So I think she kind of just meant that like I was special and I was meant for great things.
You mentioned in a bunch of different interviews computer science. Now, is there like an engineering or computer background in your family?
No, that's just what I gravitated towards. You know, like, so my dad, he went to Wharton, which is the finance school at Penn. My mom was in the school of nursing. And so my dad, he like only worked at like blue chip companies like Procter and Gamble, Microsoft, Eli Lilly. Like that was his whole career. And my mom, you know, she worked at a lot of the big hospitals in the Philadelphia area. When we moved to Connecticut, she worked at Yale for a long time. Now she works for the Joint Commission, which is like an organization that reviews hospitals to see if they should maintain their government funding. My mom is really dope. Like she has built her career around making sure that all people get great health care. Because her dad died when she was really young because, you know, back then in the South, you didn't treat Black people in the same way as you did white people with like health care. So her whole career, and I'm not, you know, wording it the right way, but her whole career is around like, how do we make sure everyone gets great care? So anyway, you know, I just had a proclivity for technical things. That's also true in how I rap, you know what I mean? Like I'm a very technical rapper. So I just fell into computer science because I was just a really bored kid and I discovered my dad's like 286 laptop and I was like, ooh, what does this do? Until I found a program called QBasic and I just taught myself how to code from the help files.
Do you remember like using DOS, like making any programs through that?
Yeah, I mean, DOS, you would write like batch files and things like that, and you would write, just like little apps that you can run on the command line or whatever. All of that stuff is foundational for me because I've been on computers, I've been on the internet since like '92. You know what I mean? Like, and so back then, like Windows was new. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't even Windows 3.1, which was like the first real major one. So most of the stuff was on the command line.
So your mom had sent you to high school in Connecticut because better opportunity than Philadelphia. What kind of kid were you in high school? And could you share a story from that time that might illustrate who you were, that experience?
Yeah, I was the Fresh Prince of Connecticut, for real. I mean, the thing was that, I ended up going to school with all these kids that grew up together. I had nothing in common with. Like, I was definitely the odd man out. And, also like being Black in a space where there's not a lot of Black people. So I had a lot of those like racially charged experiences with kids growing up in those environments. But I definitely almost got thrown out of school twice. So yeah, all right, here's a good one. So this is like 95, and we were all rocking Tommy Hill and like Nautica and Polo and all that real heavy. Obviously, I still rock Polo. But I had this Tommy Rug beat. I was like, yeah, this is my shit. Like, I look great. And I'm in my English class, and we're discussing something because, English class is about discourse and all this. And I get into a disagreement with my teacher. And I had like a really cogent argument on whatever it was, but he basically told me to shut up. And I'm like, what do you mean shut up? Like, this is a debate. Like, you're just losing, you know what I'm saying? And he says something to me, he's like, get out of here, you're tainting my class. And his name was Mr. Hunter. And I'm like, no, like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing in class. And he grabs me by my Tommy rugby joint, and he's like, get out of here. And I'm like, if you don't get the fuck off me, I'm gonna knock you out. Cause again, I am still from North Philly, you know what I mean? Like, and I hadn't been in Connecticut for too long. I guess he was shocked to hear that. So they sent me to it wasn't even the principal, it was like the head of athletics. I can't remember his name. He was this like Irish guy. And that guy would always get on me for wanting to wear like sweatsuits to school, but literally that's all he wore every day. I'm like, then how the fuck do you get to do it if I can't? Anyway, so that episode led to me going to what was called like the disciplinary committee. And here's the thing. Before this, one of my teachers actually hit me because it was my my history teacher. He went around the room one day, he asked everybody one by one, did you do your homework? And I was like, no. And this motherfucker smacked me in the back of my head. And everybody is like, oh shit. And I'm sitting there looking at this dude, glaring at him, like cracking my knuckles, ready to fight this dude. And he's like, oh, you want to hit me back? I was like, yeah. So I smacked the shit out of him too. And so I tell that story because he saved me. And I'm in this disciplinary committee situation, which is with the thing with Mr. Hunter. And he asked me, he's like, have you ever hit a teacher before? I'm like, this dude is setting me up right now. I'm like, I don't know what to say, you know what I mean? And he's like, you hit me because of this. And what I didn't understand at that point was that he saved me because he basically laid it out for all these people that if we kick this kid out of school, he will sue us for me hitting him. So I say all that to say that I had all of these experiences that were like, I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, but for whatever reason, I was singled out. You know what I mean? And yeah, obviously I should have done my homework, but like also my teacher shouldn't have hit me. Um, and in the case of the argument with Mr. Hunter, I don't think there's anything I should have done different. Like I was just sharing my ideas. And this guy's like, no, you are tainting my class. So yeah, that kind of shows you my experience in Connecticut.
You also started making music in high school. You said about 4 years before you even were battling. Did some of those songs, your first songs, make it onto your mixtapes, or were they earlier?
Nah, this is all earlier. So my best friend around that time was this guy named Kofi. And, we really loved all that mid-90s rap, like the Wu-Tang stuff, especially the Wu-Tang stuff. Redman, Helter Skelter, all that sort of stuff. And anyway, I had a friend who's still one of my best friends now. His name is Chesky. He's a musician who's incredible. And we went to high school together. And he was the first one to invite me to the studio. And at first he was like, yeah, I want you to do reggae. I'm like, I don't know shit about reggae, dog. Like, whatever. And so we went to the studio to do a cover of Can't Wait by Redman. So, so like him and his brother, they had like, like a rock band or whatever, like Chesky and David. And they were doing, I don't even know like the right subgenre, probably like alternative rock or whatever it was. And so they played the Can't Wait beat in that style, and then we rapped. And then I think we also just did like a couple freestyle songs too, because I wasn't like writing rhymes heavily. I could just freestyle or whatever. And so we did that, and the band was called Anonymous INC. So like we released a tape, and when we were in like 10th or 11th grade or something, and we were just like selling it to people at school. And, I was also like trying to DJ at that point. So I was also doing cuts on the records and all this. And yeah, that's the first thing that we ever released, any of us. And that just like started me wanting to continue to record. And Chesky let me borrow his 4-track. And also, my freshman year, my friend Dave, his name is DJ Trends. He still spins at like WBLS and things like that today. He was making records. He was a senior, so he was making beats on his Gemini mixer because it had like an 8-second sampler on it. And in fact, the only reason I can freestyle is because of him, because we used to talk on Prodigy back then on chat, and like I'd be doing like key styles or whatever. And he was like, yo, but I can freestyle in real life. I was like, yo, me too, I'm mad good. And I just had to figure it out because I knew one day at school he was gonna ask me. So I just like tried and start to do it. So yeah, none of that stuff was released under my name. It was all released under his name. And then we had a crew, because we were all heavy into like company flow and all that. And it was me, Chesky, and our guy Adam that went to school with us, who's now like a big promoter down in like the Baltimore area for concerts and all that. And he went by the name Square One. And Chesky, I don't remember if Chesky had a different name, but we had a crew called Meticulous Syndicate. And, Square One was like, he was like LP basically. Chesky was kind of like Mad Lion. I don't know who I was. I think I thought I was like J Treads or something. And yeah, so Adam bought this digital 8-track, this Roland John, and we kept it at my house, and we would all just like record these songs. I would make the beats. I think Adam made a couple of the beats too. And yeah, we just made these records. And there's this kid, his name was James. He went by the name Bootlegger. He was this Argentinian kid. It's funny because his brother, he's real big in like the legal side of things now. And he actually introduced me to my lawyer that I have to this day. But yeah, James, he went by Bootlegger, and he really loved like big pun. And he was trying to rap that way, but I guess just kind of leaning into, being like super Latin. You know what I mean? Like when he, as a personality. We were just like high school kids having fun. And I made a diss record to him. And it was over second round knockout. And Chesky was doing kind of like the Mike Tyson sort of character. And then James Bootlegger wanted to diss me back. So he came to my house to record his diss record. It was so funny because, he's like asking me like, oh, how's that take? I was like, yeah, that's good, that's good. So yeah, none of that stuff is like available now, but like that was the beginnings of all the recording.
You were freestyling, you were getting good at that. How soon did you learn the format of battling, like set up, punchline, and have that confidence?
So that was a hard one lesson for me because I was always a really good freestyler. And I thought that, battling was just about being doper than the other person. And yeah, that's clearly not true. So I went to Howard University, which is a historically Black college university. And we had this school-sponsored battle called Verbal Armageddon. And I entered in my freshman year, and the way it works is you kind of like, you don't audition, but like everyone comes and spits a verse, and then they rank everybody. And it was like, let's call it like 30 or 50 MCs or whatever it was. And my first year, I was ranked like 14th. And I couldn't understand. I was like, what do you mean there's 13 people here better than me? This is insane. Because my whole rapping experience was like, up until that point, was I didn't really know anyone else that rapped. Like the people that rap, like Chesky and Adam, rap because I was like, yo, you should rap. I need people to rap with, So I was always like the best of us. And before I went away to college, we started going up to WNHU, which was like the New Haven University radio station. And because we used to call up there all the time, and then they eventually invited us down. So there was one time where I freestyled with Afu Ra. Like that was the first like known rapper that I freestyled with. And then there was this other guy who's a friend of ours named Shoshin, and he was really dope. Like it was the first time that I had met another rapper who was incredible. So anyway, to my guy DJ Creative's credit, before I went away to school, he was like, yo, you're gonna meet all sorts of people. Some of them are gonna be doper than you, but make sure you learn from everybody. And I was like, nobody's doper than me. Like, what are you talking about? So, and then also before I get there, before I left for school, I went to Rocksteady for the first time, like the anniversary. And this is the first time I saw Many Styles. And I was like, holy shit, people can be better than me. Like, this guy is amazing. Like, that was like my first in-person experience where I was like, wow, someone can be on a level that I don't even understand. So anyway, I get to school and we have our first round, which is just like, everybody kicks verses. And you kind of you get paired up against someone else. And you're not battling. It's just that you're kicking a verse, they're kicking a verse, and whoever has the better verse goes to the next round. The next round is the actual like one-on-one battle situation. Now, we had that round this year at Howard Homecoming. For anyone that's watching this that doesn't know what Howard Homecoming is, I don't know how you could not know it, but it's like this legendary experience where there's like thousands of people on the yard. And this year was also the year that Mos Def dropped Black on Both Sides and Pharoah Monch dropped Internal Affairs. And so they were there for this battle. Like they were performing. In fact, I ran into Mos Def at the 555 Soul booth that they had on campus. And I had my vinyl on me and he signed it for me. And, I was like the hugest Mos Def fan at this point. And anyway, so the battle is during Yard Fest, which is like the main event of Howard Homecoming. Pharaoh performs, Mos Def performs, C. Rays and Breeze Everflowing perform. Like mad people were there. And so I get paired up with the year's previous runner-up to the whole Verbal Armageddon battle. This guy, Perfecto, really great rapper, good friend of mine. I actually learned a lot from him about all of this. And he murdered me. Like he had, cause he had he had like fully written rhymes. Like I didn't know that people would battle with written rhymes. He had some shit, his shit went like, icon this, icon that, icon's whack. He couldn't see me with bifocal eye contacts. Like it was all con words. And the crowd is going insane. And like the only line I had that was good was like, you wouldn't be the perfect O if you were the third letter in my name or some shit like that. But I wasn't prepared. And I just got completely obliterated. And at that moment, I was like, I never want to have that experience again. And so I just battled constantly. And, I was just like studying everybody. And so then I started coming to New York and like I entered a few battles here. There was battles that like GMS and Blitz were throwing at Spiral Lounge. And I went to one of them and it was like, we had come up from school. So it was my guy Artemis, Perfecto was there. So it was a battle and Minnie was there. And this is like, cause I had only seen Minnie for like 2 minutes in this giant cipher at Rocksteady. And it left such an impression on me because he was like saying the craziest shit I'd ever heard up until that point. And I would tell people about him. I'd be like, yeah, this guy, he says shit like this. And when he raps, he moves his fingers and like, it was crazy. So I had this like idea of who he was, but I didn't know much more than this like really brief snapshot in time. And then he was there. I was like, yo, that's the guy. And I go up to him and I was like, yo, like, I don't even know what I said, but like, we traded numbers and, we just kept in contact. But that night, he was shredding everybody in the battle. And it was him and my guy Artemis as the last two guys. And that was the first moment where I was like, oh, the people I go to school with are actually really good. Because if he's holding his own against this guy, but ultimately Minnie won. And then, I would just keep coming up and keep going to battles. And so I was like really sharpening my sword against what I thought were like the best, because like I grew up listening to like Lyricist Lounge and all these guys. And so the next time I went to the battle, it was like the all-star battle. It was like Subcon, Minnie, Pac FM, Tone Deaf, Pumpkinhead, Technique. I think it was like the first time Technique had battled. Poison Pen was there. Like for my class of rappers, of battle rap, like everyone was in that room that night. And I bodied whoever I battled the first and second round, but then I lost to Alaska. But ultimately it was Minnie and Technique at the end on that one. But my whole point is like I was just battling everywhere I could and I got really good. And so the next year when we came back for Verbal Armageddon, I was ranked third because I was the highest ranking outside of the champion and the runner-up. So Perfecto ended up winning the whole shit that year where he bodied me. But then that next year I came back and I won the whole shit. And I had also started winning here too. Like I won the Hooked battle, which was that same series of battles that Minnie battled Jen in for the first time. And so when I won that, I know I battled Minnie and I beat him. And it was me and Lou Cypher at the end. And me and Lou Cypher were crew at the time. Like Fallen Angels was me, him, Diabolic, Manifest, A-War. And, I was unclear on the full roster. Like, I think at some point Cole and Tabs were considered part of it, but whatever. So yeah, for me to end up battling Cypher and also Minnie, because I was also part of Level X, which was Minnie's crew at that point too. So it was like I was battling my friends, and in Minnie, he was someone that I very clearly like looked up to, you know what I mean? But I was super prepared for him. He was really mad at me after that. But in answer to your question, I had to figure it out, and it was a rude awakening.
You reminded me of something. When I was interviewing artists in Detroit, somebody told a story about Proof, about how he freestyled so much. He was one of the best in Detroit. And he always had a verse ready for KRS-One. If he ever came across KRS-One at some point, did you have anything like that where you're like, yo, I got something for Rakim if he ever shows up?
You know what I would do? Because when I was in DC at Howard, there was a lot of concerts at this spot called the 930 Club. And when I would know someone was coming, like I think the one I'm thinking of is like Dell the funky Homo sapien. I was like, yeah, I got some bars for Dell. Like whoever would be in town just in case. I don't remember any of those bars, but I definitely was like ready to battle anybody. Like there was one time Rod Digger's album came out and she had like a meet and greet on campus. And like she's just like signing posters, and I'm just like standing in line thinking of bars. I'm like, yo, I'm here to battle. What's up? And she was like, here's your poster. But yeah, I was definitely that guy who was like, I was the guy that, you know, would be freestyling constantly. People be like, yo, shut up. I was definitely super hip hop.
There's countless battles of yours. One that really stands out to me is it was the Simon Says beat. You took like the chorus and the first part of how Monch did it, and you battled that dude and dissed him over the same flow that Monch did. That was super dope.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that was Flex Matthews. I think he ultimately won that battle. But yeah, so in DC on U Street, there was a bunch of different like open mic spots. When I first got there was one called State of the Union, but I wasn't old enough to get in. I think that was like the main one that people like Storm the Unpredictable, Priest the Nomad, like that whole crew, they would be there. But I could get to a spot called Kaffa House. I think it was like every Tuesday. And, you know, it would be like freestyles that would turn into battles. You'd have B-boys there. I remember there was these two dudes, this one black dude, I think he went by like Noob Saibot, like the name from the character from Mortal Kombat. And then there was this Asian dude, and they were two of the illest breakers I've ever seen. Like this one dude, the black dude, he would head spin, but then he would bounce on his head. Like he would do one bounce. Yeah, super dangerous. Like I don't know why you would ever do that, but he blew my mind every time. There was also this dude, DJ Oso Fresh. There's DJ RBI. I overlap with those guys like Odyssey and all them. We would always be in these like hole in the wall spots, you know, rhyming or whatever. And me and Flex probably battled 50,000 times. Me and C's Mike's probably battled 50,000 times. K Chromosome, like all those guys out there, you know, we was all college kids just rapping whenever we could. Peter Rosenberg from Hot 97. He went to University of Maryland, College Park, and they hosted a battle once, and he was the host. And I remember Napoleon the Legend, I think me and him battled at that. So yeah, there's a lot of like foundational things that happen on that scene. But yeah, me and Jen battled mad times. He won every single time. I don't know that he should have every single time, but you know, I love Jen. Like I love what he was able to accomplish and everything. He's a legend. But I think that there were certain instances where the novelty of him being an Asian rapper helped him out a lot, you know? And I don't fault him for that. That's not his fault. Like, he was dope. So when he first popped up, it was that Hooked battle, and it was him and Minnie in the final. And we were just talking about this, the shit that Minnie said that was like so racist. But back then, that's what you did. And I'm not saying it was okay, but that's what we did. And so I heard of him from that, and everybody was talking about him. And then I did bragging rights, which was like, for me, out of all of the battles, that was the one that mattered the most because it was just like a select few rappers that won it, and they were all elite. Like Mini won, C-Rays won, Subcom won, I think Pac won. It was all like just the cream of the crop MC. So like I wanted to win that so bad. And the way that one worked, it was like you battle 3 people at once. And like you get a minute, they get a minute, whatever, whatever. And the problem with that format is when 4 people rap, you don't remember all 4 of those verses. So you gotta be really memorable. And so for a lot of people, this was the first time they heard me rap. And it was at Wetlands. And I don't remember the capacity of Wetlands, but there were so many people in there. And the crowd was on some like 8 Mile shit, like how they reacted to things. Or I guess 8 Mile was on some bragging right shit. And so the first time I went up, I shredded that shit. Like people were going, icon, like for mad long. And I remember that was the moment I met A$AP Rock for the first time too. He was like, yo, you're dope. And I knew of A$AP just from like tapes and things like that. So I was like, oh shit, this guy's dope. So, you know. And then the next round I go up, Jen is in that round. But I promise you, my bars were insane for that round. But it was the novelty of Jen that carried him over. I was so pissed. And every battle, like I never went to battles with a bunch of people. So if I won, it's because I really won over the crowd. Whereas something like bragging rights, people brought their block. And I'm not saying Jen did that because Jen was from Miami. So like it was an even playing field for us in that regard. And so I lost that one. But one time we battled at Pratt, and he definitely beat me in that one. But there's definitely video on that one. I definitely was like, you know, go do my computer science homework or some shit like that, like all racist shit. And then I think the last time he and I battled was at Fat Beats. And yeah, I think he won that one too. But definitely the bragging rights one, I should have won.
So moving into more competitive battling, there was an event called Scribble Jam that happened every year in Ohio. And a lot of artists would go, sell their music, perform, battle. How many years did you go to Scribble Jam?
I think I went to Scribble Jam like 3 or 4 years. I battled twice. And for whatever reason, I was never able to crack how that crowd worked. You know what I mean? Like, and I think a lot of East Coast battlers had a similar problem where the way that we did it just didn't work as well at Scribble Jam. And yeah, I mean, I was there when Ill Mac first popped up. And the thing about him is that nobody knew who he was when he first did it. And he came up through the preliminaries.
He was like 16, I think.
Yeah, he was like 16. And he went through the preliminary round, which meant you weren't inherently in the main battle. You just kind of like came and signed up. So he won that whole shit. And then he won the whole battle. So it was like he did the most work, embodied everybody. My favorite year, though, was the year that Dose and Mac Lethal went at it, because that was the year that Juice and Rhymefest had came back, like for the first time since the whole Eminem thing. And so everybody expected that they were going to kill everything. So I think what happened was Dose battled Juice and he beat him. And then Dose battled Mac Lethal, and everybody was like, how did Mac Lethal win that? Then Mac Lethal won the whole shit. And then Mac brought Dose back out and they battled again. Like even saying that right now, I'm getting chills because it was such a fucking moment. You know what I mean? Because it was like, typically when someone gets jerked like that, whoever wins is like, well, fuck it. Well, I won, whatever. But Mac was like, nah, I'm gonna double down on this shit and you're gonna battle me again. And I mean, it's still a toss-up. Like, obviously I'm on Dose's side because that's my guy. And I think Dose is an incredible MC, probably the single best freestyle rapper I've ever heard. But it was like an ongoing debate for like 10 years. The West Coast kids, like they really figured it out. You know what I mean? Like there was a class of rappers that came after us or overlap with us. It was like No Can, it was Ilmac, Thesaurus, and then Disaster, who I think is the best ever. They all figured it out in a way that was just next level. Like I don't know if in that Scribble Jam era they were writing at that point, but they were also incredible freestylers too. Who was the kid from Australia?
I was gonna get to that. Thesaurus versus Justice.
Yes, just like, and the thing is, like, they all came with that same style at that same time, where everything like the compounds or multis were built into it, which is what I was doing, which was what like Minnie was doing. But you know, we were all like doing it off the head. And then again, like I don't know what they were doing at that point, like whether it was a combination or whatever, which is fine. But they were all just like, they were basically doing what we were doing just a little better. You know what I'm saying? Like they all had like crazy punchlines. They were compounding into it just at a higher level. And then that kind of became the foundation of what it is now. So yeah, that was the moment when like the torch was passed to those guys.
Yeah, because I'm watching on like the people on the sidelines to see reactions. Like every punchline between Thesaurus and Justice, people would like lose their minds.
Dog, you can see me in those videos standing to the right, like jumping up and down, losing my shit, because it was so incredible. Like, again, because what I'm saying is, we did that. Like, we were doing those things, but not with the consistency that they were doing. Because again, like we were freestyling, most of us. And, you know, naturally I do a very technical form of it, but they were like consistent and they would do like 8-bar schemes and shit. And I was just like, yo, like this is it. You know what I'm saying? So it was just the next level. And I was really happy to see that, for sure.
What kind of connections did you make? Because I think when you first started going, it was like the last leg of like the Atmospheres and the Sage Francis and, you know, a lot of artists that really became independently popular. Mm-hmm. What kind of connections were you making when you went to Scribble Jam?
Yeah, so for me, I was actually really lucky. So at Howard, one of my friends, still my friend to this day, is this guy named Amal, and he grew up with Slug. And so when Atmosphere started touring nationally, they had a show at University of Maryland, and Amal was like, yo, let's go to this. Because he used to give us the tapes. That's why I said I had the tapes of Aesop. It was tapes of Atmosphere and Aesop that Amal was giving us. And so me and Artemis and Amal went to the show, and I met Slug then. And, you know, like, it was just, you know, at that point, I'm just like, oh, I'm the greatest rapper ever. And, you know, I'm just like, cool, good to meet you. Like, I like your music. But we didn't, like, connect like that. By the time I got to Scribble Jam, I'd already done the Brainstorm battle in 2003. And Atmosphere and Idea and Abilities were performing at that. So I met them then, and that was the right context for us to meet, because they got to see me battle. And they're like, oh shit, this guy is amazing. And so then we like started to build that relationship. So Scribble Jam was more like, you know, because I was heavy on like the message boards back then too, like Hip Hop Infinity, UGHH, things like that. And so it was like the in real life part of some of these relationships, because, you know, I was on the East Coast. I wasn't meeting a lot of the West Coast guys. And so it's like, yeah, you know, someone I ran into, like Doom, you know what I mean? Like I met Doom in Seattle, because the people that were throwing the show, I knew them somehow. And so I'm in the car with Doom to the show. And then I saw him again at Scribble Jam. And it's like, oh, what up? You know what I mean? That sort of thing. So it was a lot of like I don't think I met people new. It was people that I knew on the internet that I was seeing in real life.
One of the most talked about events that happened at Scribble Jam was between you and Copyright.
Oh, was it?
I would argue could be one of the first like viral hip hop memes
Yeah,
before
it
memes
was.
were a thing.
For sure, yeah. So I paid him $300 to do a hook for a song called All Hail. And the reason why was I was doing this song, let's call it like '01. And I had a song that was like a bar that was a play off of the phrase holier than thou. He had that song Holier Than Thou, which was a great song. And I was playing it for my friends, or I was spitting it for my friends, and they were like, yo, are you dissing copyright? And I was like, nah, I don't know. I don't want that to be what people are thinking at all. And, that was like a few years or a year or whatever after the thing with me and Vinny. And I was like, I'm not trying to, have a history of having problems with white rappers. And so I reached out to Copy, I think maybe on the UGHH message boards or on AIM or something like that. And I told him the bar and I was like, yo, I'm not dissing you. He's like, oh, I'm not thinking you're dissing me. And I'm like, cool. Why don't you jump on the song? And he was like, oh, okay, yeah, send me $300. So I sent him $300 in PayPal, and then I mailed him the materials. And then he never did it. And I kept like hitting him up, like, yo, when are you gonna do this? Because, like, to me, he was like more known. And I was like, well, it may take time or whatever. And then it just kind of became clear that he was ducking me because he had a show in New York. And I was like, yo, I'm gonna come through the show or whatever. And we could chop it up. And, how like when people have a show, they usually are hanging out, before the show and then after the show. He got on stage and he left. Like he didn't like try and come and interact or whatever. And I'm like, okay, this dude is ducking me. So this goes on for years because this situation happened in '05. So I'm hosting the preliminary battles. And I think this is when Il Mac won that I was talking about. And some dude, and I can't remember his name, but what he said in his bars was, who want to see E-Dub get beat up like Copyright in a lobby fight? And that was after Copy got into it with Camus in front of that hotel lobby, and Cage took pictures and posted it online. And so I was like, yeah, whoever disses Copyright is cool with me. Like, they get my vote or whatever. And so I get off stage, and I'll never forget this. Copy comes up to me. He's like, you want to go outside? I was like, I sure do. And so there's like 6 pictures from this. It's a story told in 6 pictures. So he says to me, and I'm going to get the details at this point, probably a little bit wrong, but there is a video where there's a reenactment that Swanberger from Soliloquist of Sound did. And whatever's in that reenactment is exactly what was said, because I remembered very well at that point. But anyway, we're standing outside in front of, what is it, Top Cats or whatever? And he's like, yo, let's go deeper into the parking lot. And I'm like, and in the picture, I'm like this, like, nah, let's do this right here. And before we go outside, I went to my guy, Fisher Price. I'm like, yo, I'm about to go fuck this nigga up. Like, let's go outside. And not because I was like, yo, let's jump him, but I guess I just wanted people to see it. And so I had a sidekick at this point, and because, it just happened where Cage was taking pictures, it was top of mind. I'm like, I'm gonna take pictures of this nigga, like, trying to fight me. And he was definitely drunk or fucked up or whatever, because he was swinging on me, and he was swinging like a T-Rex. Like, it wasn't like a full extension of his arms. So I'm like backpedaling and taking pictures, laughing at this nigga. And then I put my phone away and I knock him out. And that's like the picture that went viral, where I'm like doing the fucking, the Michael Jackson fucking on my toes shit, and he's falling over. And so people were doing memes of it where somebody had done the joint where it's like he's being thrown down the bowling alley. There was one where he's like dancing with a large woman, and I'm like DJing. Or no, I'm dancing with the large woman and he's DJing. There was a whole bunch of them. I don't think they're still out there, but yeah, it was a whole moment. It definitely raised my profile. Like, I remember after that, I went to a Def Juk show and I went backstage, and Cage came up to me. He's like, yeah, I just want to shake your hand. And like all those guys were like so happy that I had done that. And then like, I got a few more looks from like a touring perspective. So frankly, it was the best investment I made giving him that $300. But also I ended up getting the money back because Copy was working with this guy named Ryan from Man Bites Dog Records. And I had been working with him too. Like around that time, I've been touring pretty heavily with like Capadonna and Killer Priest and R.A. the Rugged Man and all this. And Ryan was setting all that up. And I think Copy had a show in Philly or around Philly. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna pull up to get my money. Like this is after the fight or punch or whatever you wanna call it. And so Ryan was like, nah, like we gotta end this. So he paid me back $400. And that was that.
You saw the most recent Copyright interview where he was honest about a lot of the events that took place. He even admitted that he wishes he made more friends back in those days than enemies.
I mean, I think that is a function of a lot of things that a lot of us did at that time. You know what I mean? Like, I think the rappers that we looked up to were like all standoffish. Some of them were like, had mental health issues. So when that's your blueprint, your template of like how to be, you're like, nah, fuck everybody else. I'm the best. When really you should be connecting with everyone you can, collaborating and growing this thing. So yeah, I agree. Like I think I was also like that as well. I wasn't like scamming people and stealing their money and shit, but I can relate to what he said.
So you had a bunch of mixtape releases early on, Music for Bootleggers, Rent Money Music 1 and 2. You mentioned that it took a while for an official project to come out. What do you remember about those years you were doing those mixtapes?
Music for Bootleggers was an EP. I mean, I was just trying to like look around and see what people were doing that was impactful and trying to figure out like what I wanted to do. You know, I didn't want to make an album, like a solo album until I was going to be able to make what it is that I wanted. And to this day, I still don't have an actual solo LP yet. But so Music for Bootleg is like, I've been doing like a series of CDRs. There's even a couple before that where it was just like a bunch of songs that I had done with other people. I just slapped on CDs so I could have something to sell when I was battling or doing shows. And then Music for Bootleggers was like the first, like, okay, I'm doing a project. And super lo-fi. You know, bars are great, but like my delivery wasn't great back then. But people loved those records. And then Rent Money Music was another one of those where I have like all these songs I've done with other people. Let me put it all in one place. It wasn't until Intricate Spectrum, which was like the first legit pressed EP that I did, where I had like a project that was like recorded well to some degree. It got mixed by someone that wasn't me. Didn't mean for that to rhyme at all. And then after that was Rent Money Music 2. That one I made a lot of songs specifically for that because I was like, I need something to sell on a regular basis. Like I think a lot of my funds at the time came from me selling things to Sandbox Automatic. Because unlike UGHH at the time, Sandbox Automatic would just buy things straight up. So I would go out, whenever I would be in the city for a battle or whatever, I would come with like a box of these CDRs and go over there and get like, you know, a check for like $300 or something like that. And yeah, that would kind of sustain me until either the next release, not $300, but like, you know, or until I would do some shows or I win some battles. Like that was literally my source of income at that time.
You mentioned that there's plenty of songs of yours that you don't like anymore because you outgrew them in one way or another, but what's one of your older songs that you can listen to now that makes you really proud that you created it?
I don't know, man. I don't really listen to much of the Icon, the Mike King records. And here's the thing, I have a lot of records I never put out. Like there's a record that me and Chum did. That's probably the best record I did in that chamber. It's called The Art of War with Self. And he and I were actually talking about re-recording it recently and releasing it. But that record I'm really proud of. There's a few records on Intricate Spectrum that I really loved. There's some records on, there's a whole album that Chum and I did that never came out. We had a group called Kool-Aid, and we had released something called Flavor Aid, which was meant to be like the throwaway records for Kool-Aid, because Flavor Aid was the off-brand Kool-Aid. And so there's records on both of those that I really love. The ones that came out on Flavor Aid, there was a record called Kind of a Woman that was really dope. The record I did with Slug was really dope. It's called Snake Oil. Yeah, I mean, I think it was that era. Like by the time where I had switched my name to Mike King, that's when I was like, let me just focus on having a more exact flow. Still having bars, but a more exact flow. And those are the records that have stuck with me that like I still perform to this day.
I really like the Intricate Spectrum EP.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
One of my favorite songs on there is Fuck You Pay Me.
Oh yeah. No, that song was fun.
You just come out swinging on
Oh, I was so mad, yo. Like, cause back then I would do all these shows. Like there was one time we had a show in Atlanta, and the guy that was the promoter recently passed away, so I'm not gonna say his name. But we did the show, and he was just like, oh yeah, I'm not paying you. The fuck you mean you're not paying us? Like we drove to Atlanta, but we had all these situations where people just didn't pay us. And then there was also the aspect of like, generally like I'm making all this music. I'm not making a good living from it. Like, I made a little bit of money, but it was just the frustration of not being paid for all this work. And yeah, that song was like one of my bigger performance songs at the time.
I was gonna ask if you had a memory of like the grind that you were doing, because you have a line in there that's like, what you know about riding Greyhound 12 hours just for endorsement or driving 26 hours just for a canceled performance.
Yeah, so the Greyhound thing is a whole story. So when I first started touring, people would pay you like $200 and they wouldn't pay for travel. So it's like you either pay to get there and hope you sell merch, or you gotta do something. And I didn't have a car. I don't think I did at the time. So my friend Chesky got his hands on a Word document for something called the Greyhound Ameripass. And what it was this ticket that you could get on any Greyhound bus or any of their sister companies like Peter Pan or whatever for 45 days. And so I was touring with that. Like I would just get on the bus. And if you want to see like how America really works, get on a Greyhound bus. Because you see people that are like moving across the country with their belongings in trash bags on a Greyhound bus. You see people that just got out of jail with like, mismatched pants on or some shit, because like they just got whatever they give you when you leave jail. And then they're looking at your cell phone like, yo, what is that? Because they've been in jail for 30 years. Like you see the wildest shit on the Greyhound. So anyway, I was doing that for something like 15 months or something. And then I got caught in Sacramento, which is like literally the farthest straight point from Philadelphia in America. And me and Dose got caught, and they basically were like, you're banned from Greyhound, which I'm happy. I'm banned from Greyhound. But also I have one of the most common names ever. How are you gonna ban Michael King from Greyhound? They didn't take my picture or anything. But yeah, so the Greyhound bus thing was like how I started. And what I would do was see who was on tour, and I would reach out to the promoters on that tour and be like, hey, do you need an opener? So unbeknownst to Hangar 18 and One Man Army from Binary Star, I was on their tour. They knew once they saw me, but like I would just show up in a bunch of different places and they'd be like, what? Like, how are you on the tour? So that's where those friendships got built, because Alaska and Wind and Breeze were on tour for their record with Def Jux, and then Low was on tour for, I think it was like the Sonogram record, and DJ Big Wiz was spinning for Hangar 18. And yeah, I built a lot of relationships that way, like doing all those shows. And then that also allowed me to build the relationships to start doing my own tours. So me and Doe started touring that way. And then 26 Hours for the canceled performance, I think that was us driving to Texas for a show in Dallas in Deep Ellum or whatever, that the promoter canceled it and didn't tell us. So we got there and there was something else happening at the venue. Yeah, that was a problem.
Another earlier song that I really like is Greener Grass.
Oh, I hate that song.
I think it's about a relationship, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think I had a lot of girl songs back then, you know.
You said the sun doesn't follow moon phases, they coexist to flourish the earth. And then later, you want me to jump through burning hoops just for a crowd of 22. You want, how about what I want for you? Are you able to talk about like that relationship, or at least share what you learned from it looking back?
I mean, that was like my first serious relationship. It was this woman I was with in college my sophomore year. Yeah, I mean, you know, I was like 19. Of course, there's a whole lot of things that I dealt with there. You know, your prefrontal cortex isn't developed at that point. And the main sticking point for that relationship was that she was really religious. And one day she just woke up like, oh, we're not evenly yoked, so we can't be together. So like she was thinking about marriage from like the beginning. You know what I mean? And like when you love somebody and that's what they want, you're like, oh yeah, I want to get married. Yeah, of course. And so it was really devastating to me that like she just one day decided, you know, this isn't gonna work because I can't marry you. We're 19. And so that was like an on and off again relationship for a long time. There was also the song on Intricate Spectrum called Pocket Change. I think the first verse is about her. It's a pretty mean verse. And I remember I invited her to Philly to come see me perform, and she drove up from DC, and I'm doing that song, and she obviously knew it was about her. And so she was really upset with me. But yeah, I mean, it was just like young love bullshit sort of stuff, you know?
You had a 12-inch that came out called Ahead of My Time with Tone Deaf singing. It might have been like the first showing of him singing. What kind of response did you get from that 12-inch?
People love that record. I love that record too. I mean, I think that kind of established my ethos of like, you can do things that are accessible, but still complex. Because when I made that record and people heard it like with the Spanish guitar, like No from Cunning Linguist did that beat. And it was a really dope record. Like it resonated with a lot of people. And then on the B-side, there's a record called This Means War. It was me and Pac FM. My guy DJ Trends did the beat. And then there was another record on there called The Ides of March. And that song was about a friend of mine at college who killed himself. He had, or we assume he killed himself. He jumped off the School of Business and died. And when that happened, it was during the week where I won a bunch of these battles. We had come up to New York for this battle that BET put on. And it was me and this guy named Ham in the finals. Ham, I think, had gotten signed, or he was like unsigned hype or something like that. And I crushed him. But it was clear that like this event was set up to promote him. RZA was one of the judges. Lady Luck was the host. And, you know, I remember like looking over to RZA, like, save me. Like, I've killed this guy. Like, what are we doing here? And C-Rays was in that battle. And a bunch of us from Howard were in that battle too. But anyway, I'd come back from that and, you know, his name was Terrell. I came back and he was dead. And he was like, you know, one of my really good friends at Howard at the time. And I hadn't seen him as much because we were in different dorms and he was in the School of B. I was in engineering school and all that. So we weren't as close around that time. But I remember coming back to school and everyone being like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I didn't know what had happened. So yeah, that song was really just like dealing with that. But to your original question, that was the first, thing that I had done that was, like you said, kind of um, promoted because like I put it out myself. So it wasn't like promoted. Like there wasn't any like PR or anything with it. But I was using my relationships to get it in the places that it needed to be. So like Fat Beats carried it, like it was on the wall here at the store. It had distribution through Boiling Point Distribution. I remember we sold a bunch of copies in Japan. And yeah, like it was the first record that a lot of people knew about. And I remember, and I don't know if DJ Eclipse remembers this, and it probably like if he sees this, he'll probably be like, "Oh shit, really?" But I remember I went to Fat Beats because a lot of times I would come here, that's where I would go. Like I didn't, I would just like get off the train and go to Fat Beats and chill until whatever the event was. And I walked in and I introduced myself to Eclipse. And he was like, "Oh yeah, we got your record. It's dope." And then he pulls one off the wall and he plays the record, but he plays Ides of March. And that shit made me feel like mad uncomfortable to hear it in Fat Beats. So I just walked out. Like I didn't say anything to him. And he probably was like, "Yo, who the fuck does this guy think he is? I'm playing his record." But I just felt mad weird to be listening to the song about my friend who had died in public. He had me on his radio show later as well. So yeah, shout out to Eclipse because he showed love. I think they may have even played records on one of my more recent records on Rap Is Out of Control. So nothing but love for him. But like that moment, I know I didn't come across well, and I never communicated why I did that. But yeah, that record was like the thing that kind of established me to some degree because you weren't considered official until you had vinyl back then. Like it would always be like the older rappers would be like, "Oh, when you gonna put a record out?" Like until you've done that, you weren't considered official. You were an internet rapper until then.
Since Intricate Spectrum, I felt every album got better. Like Mike and the Fat Man was better than Intricate Spectrum, and then Flavor Aid. You had mentioned before that you weren't ready. You were rapping fast and needed to maybe structure it better for audiences. At what point did you feel like you were more ready?
Yeah, I think the culmination of all that was the Kool-Aid record that never came out. I think that Mike and the Fat Man had a lot of those problems as well. Um, I think for a long time I was really stuck on like trying to be super impressive and just saying like the wildest shit I could think of and doing super intricate things and whatever. But with Kool-Aid, I was just trying to make a record that like anyone could enjoy, but it would still have those principles of like really good rapping. And it's a shame that record never came out. So like me and Chum actually had two falling outs. The first one was around Mike and the Fat Man, and that's why there's two tracks on there that are not produced by him. We had a record deal with a company called Uprising Records, and I don't remember exactly what happened with that, but we just weren't getting along, and so I still needed to do two more records, and they wanted me to get features, and so we had the record Poverty, which had Blue Raspberry on it, and then also the record that has Killer Priest on it. I don't remember what that one was called. So we ended up putting that record out with those two on there, and then I guess we got over that and then kept working on things. And then we started Kool-Aid. And around that time, like I had a lot of reasons to do bigger records because like I'm playing festivals in Europe and all these sorts of things. And I wanted to have records that like really went off in those environments. So I would go to Chum's crib and, I would just pick a random record off the wall and be like, "Yo, see if there's something there. And I would come in with like themes like, yo, I really like disco records and things like that. So we had all sorts of like really danceable records, but we're still, really focused on like good rapping. But the whole original idea around Kool-Aid was, it was meant to be music to like help you get through hard things, like literally aid to be cool through things, right? And so that album, again, it's like the best thing I've probably done. It never came out. And the original plan was for Flavor Aid to be first. There would be features on that. So we got Slug, we got Elzai, and we're gonna use it kind of the way that people do things now, where it's like you have something to get people's attention, to prepare them for the big thing that you're doing. Because I never wanted to do a bunch of mixtapes. Like I didn't feel like I had the ability to have that much output. Because at that time, people would have like, 4, 5, 6 mixtapes in 4, 5, 6 months. And like I just wasn't able to do that level of output because I'm just too much of a perfectionist. So I was like, cool, let's just put a body of work with these features and then follow it up quickly with the album. But what happened was we had a record on there. It was called 80s Baby. And I was making fun of like all the hipster kids and things like that. And, I was making fun of like people like Spank Rock and MIA and all that on the record. But Chum wanted to work with those people. And he was like, yeah, I'm about to do records with MIA. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, yeah, so we got to change the record. I was like, cool. Well, there is no record. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't respond well to someone telling me something to do. You know what I mean? And so it was a mistake though, because that record would have been, at that time, if we would have dropped that record at that time, like we would have been a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, because that was that time when everyone was going to that bigger sound, but they were going more in that electronic direction. Like think about how like those records that Usher was doing around that time. I can't even think of the names, but like the records he was doing with Will I Am around that time, like a lot of people were making music that sounded like that. We were going more like the lo-fi, like disco soul, New Jack Swing, like all those sorts of sounds combined with, some of the harder sounding records too. And it was a really strong body of work. So I wish that record would have came out. And at one point I just like put it out for free download. So some people have it, but it would have deserved a really good, proper release.
So your name Icon came from a Black superhero comic book. I often wonder how you would describe what type of superhero or character Icon the Mic King is. Some of my favorite punchlines come from you, or metaphors, I guess you could say, when you said like, I write 2 different rhymes at the same time with both hands. Like I just imagine somebody doing that.
Yeah.
Right? Or the only thing between me and you is a greater than sign.
Damn, I was good.
I hit you so hard, the equal and an opposite reaction make me disintegrate.
Yo, that's ill.
Which I looked it up if that was actually like scientifically possible.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, no, but it's a great line.
Yeah, I mean, so Icon was like the Black Superman in the Milestone comic series. And that came from, like I said, I was drawing comic books growing up, and my mom introduced me to Milestone Comics. She was like, hey, you should check out this Black-owned universe. And so I was really into it, right? Like there's like Hardware, Static, who became Static Shock and all this. And yeah, so when I came up with my rap name, I was like, yeah, Icon. But as far as like the superhero or character that Icon the Mic King was, I think that was more like a science fiction sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like the lines that you talk about are kind of like in that ethos where it's like, I'm imagining myself as like a Blade Runner character, or, I'm in Quantum Leap, like all these sci-fi shows that I was raised on. Like my parents were really into shows like that and like Star Trek and things like that. And my imagination is very much shaped by, like 90s B movies. Like this is a movie called I Come in Peace. It's one of my favorite movies growing up. I can't watch it now because it doesn't like hold up. But the plot of that film was that there's this like alien that comes to Earth. He shoots humans up with heroin, and then he extracts this chemical from their brain because it's this like really high-end designer drug on his planet. And he has this gun that like shoots CDs and slits people's throats and shit. Like my imagination is all that sort of shit. And so when I rhyme, especially then, it was always like, what can I come up with that conveys wild imagery like that? Or is like super clever in a way that no one else is thinking about. And, I also very much attribute that level of rhyming to like Cannabis and Minnie and people like that were just always saying things that was like mind-blowing to me. And I always wanted to be like that sort of character.
My all-time favorite is I don't use words, I say an image. I win at everything. If I get no love, we're playing tennis. The setup is like so much better than the actual punchline. Because if you can imagine somebody who had the ability to speak in images.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like ChatGPT.
Yeah, exactly. So you did some European tours with Dose Noun. The way he described it was he'd basically like book a plane ticket for like a month out and then hit up promoters and fill in the dates to do a tour.
Yeah.
The same way you did it?
Yeah, exactly. Dose took what I was doing in the States and replicated in Europe. And he did it really well because he was able to connect with the right promoters, like the promoters that booked the whole tours. And so I think one of his early ones, like he opened for Afu Ra, who was huge over there. And then that turned into him, building relationships with all these other promoters. So in 2006, he brought me with him. And that was my first time going to Europe. And yeah, it changed everything because like we made a lot more money doing that than being over here. And, people bought a lot more merch. And it also just exposed me to Europe, right? Like, I think having that experience was super valuable to where I'm at now. But yeah, we had some great shows like Finland, Denmark. Only place we didn't have good shows, I think, was it Turkey? And yeah, I lost my temper and threw a chair at somebody out there back then. But yeah, other than that, we had some great shows. Oh, the Czech Republic, I didn't know what to expect anywhere that we went the first time, but the Czech Republic was a place that embraced me pretty heavily. And actually ended up spending a summer out there, I think in 08 or 09. And yeah, I really loved it out there. I got a lot of friends, or I had. I don't really keep in touch with them anymore. But I had a lot of friends out there for a while.
There was an interview in the early 2000s where you referenced Philly as the city of brotherly hate, and that it made you stronger and more competitive. It taught you born alone, die alone. You don't need anyone or anything, and you choose your own destiny. Does that still hold true today?
I think that's more intrinsic for me. But at the time, I was more talking about the Philadelphia hip hop scene. And I think more as a function of me being more introverted and also people learning of me through the altercation with Vinny Paz didn't really set me up to have a bunch of great relationships there at the time, So like me and Reef didn't get along for a long time either. And so it was like a continuation of the Vinny thing to some degree because he was friends with Vinny, but it was also a function of how I was acting. Like I was on the Philly hip hop message boards, not making friends, like, pissing a lot of people off. Because back then, I was very elitist as a rapper. Like if you weren't, like the people that I've clearly indicated that I revere in this interview, I was like, yeah, you're just not good. I don't fuck with you. I'm better than you. Like, you're terrible. Like, I was telling people these things. And it goes back to what Copy was saying, like that idea of, not like building relationships, not like, you know, looking for the good in what it is that people do, just like being in competition with them. I remember when Reef was battling, like he was doing like EO Dub, I think he had done Scribble Jam and all these things. I thought I was being congratulatory to him because he had just won. But I was like, I said something like, yeah, now you're almost on my level or something like that. Like, and the way I meant it at the time was something like, yo, like you're doing great. Like you're doing the things that I do. But, I understand now like how that would never be considered as like a good way to say that. Instead, I should have been like, yo, you were dope today. I really, loved how you showed up. You did great, like that sort of thing. But I just wasn't operating that way. I was just a dick to people, you know what I mean? And so I created that where people didn't like me or, I had this reputation for being an asshole and shit like that. Which then created, an environment that wasn't supportive for me. So I can't really blame Philly for that, although there's a lot of people that feel that way about Philadelphia. There's like a crabs in a barrel sort of situation and so on. But I think that, after living in New York, after knowing what it takes to be successful, if I lived in Philly now, I feel like I would navigate it a lot better. You know what I mean? Because for it being the second biggest city on the East Coast, it still kind of has like a small town mentality to some degree. And it's not hard to be a part of the biggest things happening in Philly. So I feel like if I went back and lived there now, like it would just be nothing but opportunity.
Seeing you like years later, like it's a complete 180.
Sure.
What do you attribute to that change in your attitude and way of thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you are making music and that's all you're doing and you run into a bunch of roadblocks and you see other people that you don't think are as good as you, like they're making it, you're like, what's the difference, right? And like, it comes down to they got, an opportunity that you didn't get, or they're able to find resources that you can't find, or, I mean, it really just comes down to that, right? Like they have better relationships. And so when you believe in yourself so much that you're like, hey, I am so good, why is this not happening for me? It does shift into like a more negative mindset. And you start to feel like you don't have agency in your life and what you're able to do, right? So I think I learned from that as I shifted into the business world. And rather than being like, oh, I'm better than everyone, it's more been like, how do I stay open to friendships? How do I stay open to opportunities? How do I lead with helping people rather than being like, what can they do for me? Why am I not getting these opportunities? And, that yields a much better experience. You end up having more agency that way because you build more relationships. And as you see more success, it kind of compounds and you realize you can't do everything yourself. So then you kind of shift your mindset into like, well, I can do anything. How do I do it? Who do I need to connect with? And it's more a growth mindset rather than the world is against me.
Did you finish at Howard or you dropped out early?
I did not finish at Howard. I was there for 3.5 years, and yeah.
What did you decide you wanted to do?
So what happened was one day I was listening to No Regrets by A$AP Rock off the Labor Days record. And it was just like a really profound experience where I was like, I don't want to do anything I don't want to do. Because the whole story is about this woman who's just like doing art all the time. And like from a little kid, and like she's ignoring the shit around her. And then she like dies at the end, but she's like she dies empty. She's like happy that she spent her whole life creating art. And it was really profound for me that I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I don't want to be here. I had these, these internships where I didn't enjoy myself. Like, I had more fun making things on computers for me than I did working on it. You know what I mean? And I was like, this isn't cool. I'm not enjoying myself. I want to rap. And I was like, well, I can only rap till I'm 40. So I can go back to school at any point. So let's just rap now, which is ironic. Or no, when we dropped Iconic, I was like, I have to drop it before I turn 40. We literally pushed live on the record on Bandcamp at 11:59 the night before I turned 40. So it was like closing the loop on that idea.
You have a song called Poverty on Mike and the Fat Man with Blue Raspberry from Wu-Tang fame, where you mentioned poverty being a choice. So from a child of North Philly who dropped out of school, focused on a career, eventually started your own agency to be a founder and CEO, not to mention one of the more influential thought leaders in digital marketing. Do you feel that poverty is a choice and that people use the victim mentality of systemic racism or whatever it be, preventing them from achieving a better outcome in life?
I don't think it's a binary question. I think there's a lot of nuances to it. I think that you can't ignore the implications of systemic racism and all those sorts of things. Like, you can't ignore what people are born into and what have you. But I also think that anyone can do anything. You know what I mean? You just got to figure it out, right? Like, there's a lot of disadvantages that I've had as, a Black person, as a Black man in America. But I've also learned to navigate them. And I think that my experiences of, going to school in Connecticut at a rich prep school prepared me for navigating those experiences. And my parents were very mindful of that. And they were like, cool, let's get you the opportunities. Let's make sure that you're able to get through these things. But not everyone has that. And not everyone can see beyond their experiences. Even as we talk about the mindset that I had from that interview that you're talking about, it is difficult to break that cycle for anyone. Even though I had more advantages than most people, I still got to a space where it's like, everyone's against me, you know what I mean? So I think that there's a lot of aspects that go into it. And then you've got to be open to learning more. Like, I've been a voracious reader my whole life. And I'm also an autodidactic person. Like, I learn more by myself than someone teaching me. And so it really took me continuing to learn and try things to get out of that cycle. Even within the marketing environment, I've had moments where it's like, oh, this isn't working. Why can't I make this work? But I never give up on it. I'm always like, well, I just haven't tried the right thing. For me, my motivation is intrinsic. For me, I'm like, if something isn't going right, I haven't done something right. And not everyone looks at that way. A lot of people are more thinking like, these external circumstances that I can't control will never change. And for a lot of people, you can't achieve things you can't see. So if you grow up in an environment where you never see someone that looks like you doing the thing, then you may never be able to break that cycle. So that is a meaningful thing that needs to be overcome that not everyone can do, even though, the internet is available to everybody. We can all make content and make money off of content, but you've got to figure out how to be consistent and disciplined in order to do that. And there may be circumstances that you were never taught how to do that. So I don't think it's a black and white thing. I think there's nuance to all of it. And even with me, right? I'm considered one of the best speakers in the SEO space. But I didn't even think that was available to me until I saw Will Reynolds. I was at MozCon in 2011, and I was like, oh, this is great. Like, this is really cool. And it wasn't until Will Reynolds got on stage, a light switch flipped in my head. And I was like, oh shit, they let black people do this? And I literally, while he was on stage, I pitched for the first conference I spoke at. So it's really powerful having examples of people doing the thing that you want to do as a mechanism for you to think that you can also do that.
I know you've explained this before, but can you briefly touch on the story of you were an indie artist, you got injured and needed health insurance, and that started your career?
Yeah, so I got into a bike accident, and it's pre-Obamacare, so I didn't have health insurance. And, I got this big-ass bill in the mail, and I couldn't afford it. And so I was like, cool, I guess I gotta get a job. And this is 2006, a few months before me and Dose went on our first European tour. And so I get this job at this SEO agency, and they're like, oh yeah, you can figure this out. You know how to code, because I had done web development. And at that point, I was like, oh yeah, SEO, that's just meta tags, right? And they're like, no, there's more. But '06, there wasn't much more, right? Like it was like bolding text and doing searches like keyword plus add URL and then dropping links there. But anyway, so yeah, I worked there, and I started in August, and I knew the tour was coming up in November, and I was like, cool, I'm just gonna work really hard, and so it doesn't seem bad when I quit in 3 months. And then my boss, he fancied himself a musician, so I was like, oh, it's cool. My boss, he plays the guitar or whatever. So I went to him. I was like, hey, I gotta quit because I'm going on tour. And he was like, no. You're our best guy. Like, of course not. And you can just work from home. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, just take your laptop on tour with you and do the work from there. Changed my life. Because I didn't even know there was jobs like that. You would hear about people that work remotely, but like, I thought that was people that worked at like Accenture and Microsoft or something. I didn't know that was available at a low-level job like this. And so I did that. And, like I would be on the train to the next town. And at that time with SEO, it wasn't like we did deliverables like documents and audits and things like that. What we did is they gave us the website and you made adjustments to the website. So I would download a whole website on FTP, make changes, and then upload them back to the website. No review, no GitHub, like change control or version control or anything like that.
Just live production updates.
Yo, straight to production. And one time when I didn't know PHP, I was working on a PHP site, and it was like Black Friday or something like that. And I left like an errant line of code, and it brought the site down on Black Friday for an e-commerce site. And they were like calling us and shit because they couldn't figure out what was happening. And yeah, I like left, like a comment in the wrong place or some shit, and it brought the site down. But yeah, so that's where it started. And then I would just like, download it, upload it when we get to the next town because there's no Wi-Fi on the train at that point. And that's when I realized like there's more to this than I understand. So how can I make a career out of it?
What kept your interest in the field? Was it a challenge for you? Did you see a bigger vision for what it could be?
I didn't see a bigger vision at first. I had worked at this company that was in like the basement remodeling space, and we did like lead generation. We would build sites for them. And I didn't know anything about the SEO community for a long time. So I was like reinventing a lot of wheels. And in fact, I was listening to that Cannabis song, Poet Laureate Infinity, and that made me come up with the idea that people were already doing that I didn't know, which was article spinning. Because the way that verse worked was like, I think it was like 8 tracks, and and he had 8 different versions of the verse all at the same time. And the bar from one version would rhyme with the next bar in the next version. So you could turn it on and off, and you could make an infinite verse. Like, based on what you toggle on and off, it could be a different verse every time. And I was like, yo, I can do that with content. So I reinvented article spinning myself. And I was just doing things that were creative, innovative, and so on without having the context. But I didn't realize like this is something I can make a lot of money from. And it wasn't until I worked at Razorfish in Philly, where I was working on huge brands like Ralph Lauren, Hawaiian Airlines, ABC, things like that, that I was like, yo, there's something to this. Like, there's a huge interactive agency that's, got offices in all these places, all these big brands. And I'm working with really smart people. And I'm like, yo, maybe there's something to this. And the other thing was that, when I was working at Razorfish, I was just a contractor and I was only working 3 days a week. So what I did is I just worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then I would just go do like long weekends and go do shows and whatever. And so I think I'm in like Sweden with Dose somewhere. He's like, yo, I know you're doing the SEO thing. My cousin owns this SEO company, software company in Seattle. I'm like, who's your cousin? He's like, yeah, his name is Rand Fishkin. I was like, what? And so, I'd been reading The Art of SEO, which was Rand's book with a few other people. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna reach out to him. So I emailed him and he was nice enough to email me back. I was like, yeah, how do you get involved in this stuff? He was like, you shouldn't, there's no space for it. I was like, should I start blogging? He's like, no, everyone's blogging, there's nothing else to say. I'm like, okay, cool, well, good to meet you. And then I met him in person in New York because there was a Moz meetup. I met him and Geraldine, and they were just immediately cool to me. And then I started writing for Moz, and I went to MozCon, and then Rand invited me to like be involved. And it all just kind of like cascaded into, all the thought leadership stuff.
You read The Art of SEO, but it feels like you've read something more extensive because the way you speak about Google, you understand it from a very deep engineering level. Where does that come from?
It comes from, one, how I learned, and two, what my skill set was before all this, right? Like, so I actually hadn't been coding for a long time. Like when I was rhyming, like, I would make websites and things like that, but I wasn't, writing real code. Like I wasn't doing C++ anymore or whatever. And to his credit, there's this guy named Josh Giardino at the first SEO agency I worked with. And he was really heavy into doing things in PHP and, understanding how information retrieval worked. And so he was one of the people that was teaching me there was more than what it is we were doing at that company. So my starting point was more than what was in that book. And the thing was, like, all of the things that I had learned were from these disparate sources. So I wasn't sure I knew what I was talking about. And reading The Art of SEO kind of like codified a lot of it. It was like a lot of what I knew in one place, reinforcing what I thought. So as I got more into this stuff, it became more about like, reading things from Bill Slawski and reading patents and white papers and reading, information retrieval books. And in the last, 7 or so years, that's where I primarily learned things rather than reading other people's blog posts.
What was the deciding factor for you to take the leap to start your own agency? Did you just build up a list of clients that wanted to work with you from thought leadership stuff or conferences?
It was just frustration out of working with other people. So, like when I worked at iAcquire, I quickly became the face of that brand, but I had no control over what we were doing. Like I was able to advise on things that we did. Like, Because when I got there, they were just like a link brokering firm. And I didn't understand that. Like, I didn't know that they were just buying links. Like, no one, they were like, yeah, we do link building, we do content marketing. They were like using all the euphemisms for it, but not directly saying to me like, hey, we just buy links. So when I got there and they got de-indexed in Google, and I had been like running around the world promoting this company, people thought it was my company. So when all that happened, they kind of like left me out to dry to take the brunt of the negative publicity. Like, I went from overnight everyone loving me to everyone being like, he's a scammer and all these other things for some shit I had nothing to do with, aside from the fact that I was leading marketing for this company. So there was that experience, which ultimately led to a lot of distrust with those guys for me. And then I was like, well, maybe I should start my own thing now. But then I was just like running out of money. And New York is expensive. And I was like, all right, well, let me get a job. And so I went to Acronym, and I just didn't go well because, I think at that point I was like what they call unhireable, where it's like I have so many opinions about how things should run. And, I just wasn't getting along with the CEO. Like, they had the software product that I didn't believe in, and they wanted me to go out there and promote it. And yeah, it just wasn't the right fit. And so at that point I had saved up enough money where, if I started a business and it didn't work out, I could at least live for the rest of that year. And I started it, and immediately people were like, oh yeah, I've been waiting for you to be, on your own so I could come work with you. And yeah, so it just went from there.
So at one point, you stepped in to purchase a website to revive undergroundhiphop.com.
Mm-hmm.
What was the significance for you to want to invest in that company?
Yeah, I mean, UGHH was, one of the foundational websites for that scene, right? Like, there was hiphopsite.com, UGHH, there was, SOHH, Sandbox Automatic, a few other things as well. And so Adam had announced that they were closing down because, they had a lot of debt, things weren't going well. And it was another situation where I took a look and I was like, oh, this is an SEO problem because they got hit by Panda and never recovered. And I was like, oh, I can fix that, And so I reached out to him because, he announced it was shutting down. And I was like, okay, I could do something about this. And we talked. And then I went to Dose and AWAR and I was like, yo, I think we could come together, take this over, and also use it as a platform for us, for the things that we might want to do. And so we did that. And we kept Adam on, and I actually gave him a really generous deal where he got a portion of the revenue. So not even portion of profit, portion of the revenue. And, going by the books for that company, it was the best year he ever had both revenue-wise and also what he made off the business. And that could be, inaccurate. I'm just basing it on what's in QuickBooks. And everyone was excited to get it started. But the problem was the business model doesn't really work. So one, they do what's called just-in-time fulfillment, meaning that when you order something, we order it from the distributor that day. And then the distributor sends it to us. In the case of our bigger distributor, it would get there the next day. In the case of Fat Beats, because Fat Beats moved to LA, we have to ship it ground, so it takes 5 days to get to us. So from a customer experience perspective, that's awful, because we all live in the Amazon environment now, where it's like you order something, you want it the next day. The other thing is that we compete with Fat Beats, so we're never gonna have cheaper prices than Fat Beats. And our stuff is gonna take longer because we gotta get it from across the country. So that sets us up to, one, not be where you want to order from most often because we're not the cheapest. And two, we can't ever, because the margins are so thin, you can't really make a lot of money off of that. And so coupling that with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt that the company already had, and then also the generous deal that I gave to Adam, it just didn't work, right? And where I primarily focused on was content, because again, we needed to recover them from Panda. I think I spent like 90 grand on content that year. The ROI from that content, and only if you're looking at it with like a look back window of like 90 days, was 10 grand. So it just didn't work. Like, it was just a money pit. Yeah, I mean, we just got to the point where it ran out of money and it wasn't sustainable.
That's a shame, because that's like the ultimate passion project for someone like you.
Yeah, and I intend to revive it, but it needs to be a different business model. And what I'm thinking is that it should be a marketplace where, because the other thing is that we're also now competing with the rappers doing direct to consumer. Let's say you order a record from Black Milk, and Black Milk is like, cool, I'll give you all these incentives, I'll sign it, I'll do all these things. Well, why would you order from us if you're not going to get those things? And first, you got to build the relationships with people to get those versions, or do deals with them where you're pressing the records for them, and that's more capital up front. So it's just more difficult. So instead, what I want it to be is like a marketplace, like an Etsy, where our whole goal is building the audience, driving the traffic, focusing on content, and then it's all margin because we don't have to fulfill it for you.
Oh, I see. So each artist can use that platform like an indie seller on Etsy.
Right, exactly.
I look forward to that. I think about a year ago, there was a Google antitrust testimony. There were leaked docs of how they rank. Was there anything that you stopped doing after all that came out?
Yeah, volume-based link building. It's not worth it, because there are always things in the patents where Google says that they're looking for parity on both sides of a link. As far as like relevance, like don't get a link from a page about bananas when you're trying to promote sneakers, right? And for a long time, people have just been like, well, it doesn't matter. If I build 1,000 links, it's going to overpower those signals anyway. But the reality is, like, you could just build 5 links from very high relevance pages that actually get traffic and live in the higher quality parts of the index, and you'll see the results. So now that we had proof of that, we shifted our approaches in that direction. And it's just a way more efficient way for us to be building links.
I'll find like example of competitor pages that have like 500 keywords on page 1, they're on page, and then I'll look at what backlinks that page is getting, and there's like, sometimes there's nothing. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I always thought that would be like the foundation of like humans telling the computers what humans like.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's just not.
Well, the thing is this. So for every factor that's used, there's a weighting associated to it. So think of it as like a giant equation, and then there's a coefficient for each thing, right? So what they do is they turn those up and down based on what they see as working. So if SEOs are like, okay, if I build a ton of links, then I'm going to get a better performance. Google will then turn down the weight on those links and turn up the weight on something else. So some of the aspects of the content itself can overpower links in certain spaces. And so for a long time, I would say going back to like 2017, we've more focused on that because we found that just making the content relevance better will yield better performance. It may overpower links in certain cases. And more often than not, we see that being true because less people focus on the actual content relevance.
So now AI is here. How do you define the moment that we're in right now? Is it a reinvention of search? Is it the third renaissance of search?
Callback. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an evolution of search. It is a reinvention to some degree because the modalities are changing, right? Like it's more about talking to things. Google has always said they want to build the Star Trek computer. It's basically here now, you know what I mean? And they're pushing people more towards using it in their environment rather than going to the device to use it. See what I'm saying? Like they want it to be kind of like an ambient thing that's always available to you. And with AI, you have more capabilities around that. Like previously there was like broad personalization. Now we're in a space where you can get a one-to-one answer based on your context and the relationship that the system has with you over time. So yeah, it's an inherently different version of search that's just going to continue to evolve.
Did this come sooner than you expected, later than you expected, or were you not surprised?
I'm not surprised. I think, all the GPT stuff, it had been bubbling for years before we got to ChatGPT, right? Like we were using GPT-2 on clients back in 2020. GPT-3 was available shortly thereafter, right? Like you could use tools like, what was it, like Chat AI, or I can't remember what it was. It's not as popping right now though. But there's been tools to support this for a while. So it's not shocking. And it also doesn't shock me like how Google is moving, and that once the idea was validated that people will use this, even though you've got hallucinations and things like that, that they're all in on it. So yeah, I'm not surprised. I've just been pretty dialed in the whole time.
Is there one thing that has surprised you about all of the AI tools and AI engines so far?
No, what surprised me is that Google is fine with eroding the trust that they've built over 25 years. Like historically, you do a search and whatever comes back, you're like, oh yeah, I trust this. Google isn't interpreting the information, it's just giving me the information on the web. Now they're fine with like interpreting something wrong and then giving that as an answer just to be competitive. That's very shocking to me.
Yeah, I thought you had some very fair feedback towards Google, whereas like SEO community has pushed for like all their clients to do everything that Google has wanted over the years.
Yeah.
And then, what do we get back?
Yeah, and at Google I/O this year, I actually like took them to task on that. I was like, you've basically been having us be your janitors of the web for the last 25 years, and what do we get out of that? Like literally, we're at Google I/O where they have us in this back room, and they just give us like soda and chips. Whereas for developers, they're putting on this like multi-million-dollar, experience to get them to continue to use their stuff. But for us, they've effectively done social engineering on us to like have us do their dirty work. So like with the secure protocol, they had us, they dangled the carrot that if you go secure, you will get a rankings boost. They did the same thing with structured data. They did the same thing with, Google Core Web Vitals. And we rushed to get our clients to do all that stuff. And because everyone did it at once, there is no actual impact from it. So we just do things that make it so their search engine works better for what?
On the other hand, you also mentioned that SEO is historically not good at being strategic. We need to be engineering, not so much as just optimizing. What mindset shift do you think SEO professionals need to make to think more like an engineer instead of a marketer? Is it part of your open source innovation conversation?
What I'm calling what we need to evolve to is relevance engineering. And I don't think you need to like not think about marketing. I think you just need to understand how things actually work. So if you're a good SEO, you're really just like a power user of Google. You know what I mean? Like, things like site colon searches, how to, put together rules for an HT access file. It doesn't mean you know how Google works. And where we're at, they're building it in front of us. Like everything that they are using is available to you. So when they first announced SGE, which became AI overviews, I was like, I need to know how this works because, it wasn't available. You couldn't play with it yet. And so I did a bunch of digging into the techniques that are used, so retrieval augmented generation. And I built a proof of concept for how SGE worked before it came out. And it allowed me to really understand like what you need to do. There's the whole like chunking and, it's all based on semantic relevance and so on. So once that came out, we already knew how to function in this environment, whereas everybody was running around like, what do we do? What do we do? And so that's what I mean. Because I was able to take concepts that are used to build these things, replicate them, and then look at how the sausage is made, I knew what you need to do in order to get visibility in this environment. Most of the SEO community just kind of sits around and waits for someone to say what to do. If you want to actually have advantages, you need to figure out what to do.
So why do you think that hasn't gained traction yet?
So I think when you go back to how SEO evolved, you had a bunch of people that were actively experimenting and then sharing those experiments. And I think it's also a function of the fact that SEO evolved out of the webmaster community. So it was already people that were inherently technical. But once SEO became its own industry, there's no one path to become an SEO. Like, you don't go to school to become an SEO. Like, no one was like, I want to be an SEO when I grow up. So you end up with varying skill sets, and there's no like criteria that we've agreed to that these are the things you need to know to be an SEO. So you can be a content SEO, you can be a local SEO, you can be all these subsets. And even if you go to like 10 people that are like, I'm a content SEO, they all do very different things. Like they all would describe their role differently. And the same is true of like a technical SEO, Python SEO, so on and so forth. And so what I would love to see happen is that we go back to that experimentation mindset of people sharing their insights. And there's a few, there's people like me, there's people like Dan Petrovic, people like J.R. Oaks. There's a good list of folks that are actively doing things, but it's not common. It's not what everyone does in this space. And with things moving so fast, it's the only way that we can know what to do.
Do you think it's likely that Google would just switch over to only AI overviews and not have the traditional blue links like anymore? And what new KPIs should businesses measure? What's the best way to communicate value to clients in a low-click world?
I think if Google can figure out ads, anything is on the table. Like if the ads work in an AIO or AI mode only experience, 10 blue links will go all the way away. What do they care? You know what I mean? Like their goal is to make the world's information accessible. And they also feel that the cognitive costs of having to review 10 blue links and, come up with the Orwellian newspeak version of your query and whatever, and then having to read through things and then reformulate your query, like it takes too long. It's too much for people. So they want to get you to your answer or your action as soon as possible. Now, as far as the measurement of it, the way I think of it is you need to stratify your measurement into 3 different buckets. There's performance measurement, there's channel metrics, and then there's also input metrics. The performance metrics are the same as they've always been. Like how much traffic comes to your site, what does it do? Does it convert? Things like that. The channel metrics are going to be things like share of voice, citation rate, citation sentiment. How do you show up in these channels? And then the input metrics are the things that you can actually change. So how do you rank for the synthetic queries that are being used in Query Fanout? What's the bot activity to your pages? Because they're going to be requesting them in real time. And then what's your passage relevance scores for the passages in your content? So the value to the business is going to be in the channel and the performance metrics. Channel metrics, because that's where the brand opportunities are. Like one of the main things here is that these chat services operate more like branding channels than performance channels. So you're really thinking about like how often am I being seen in these responses, and assuming that that's going to change how people think about your products and services. And then the performance stuff is, again, what it's always been. Like, what do people do once they click through, if they click through?
What's your opinion on Reddit being like one of the top cited sources in some of these AI engines, as far as like it feels like it's going against some of the EAT, policies?
Yeah, I don't think it's a good thing for the internet. Reddit is like there's moderators on Reddit, but there's so much stuff out there that is reflective of the worst part of humanity. And also, I mean, I think that's fundamentally true of the language models themselves because they are trained on Reddit heavily as well. Um, yes, the whole idea of it going against EEAT makes sense as well, but Google is looking for like real experiences from people, and you're more likely to get that from Reddit. So I get why people use it, and a lot of people were appending Reddit to their queries anyway. So it's a reaction to user behavior, but I don't think it's a good thing. I also don't think generative AI is super great in search because there is value to someone doing their own research, not having the machine interpret the information. Because if you review something that has multiple viewpoints, you have to draw the conclusion yourself. But if the machine is drawing the conclusion, you never get the opportunity to do it. And I feel like it's setting us up for another one of those like Cambridge Analytica things where the web is flooded with viewpoints that are biased by the machine. And then that being the input that we take about what we think shapes how we think about things.
Now, I want to learn a little bit about the culture at iPullRank. You mentioned that, or you've described it as a culture of independently thinking world-class operators. As an example, with like Barstool, Dave Portnoy says that he likes to hire people that have weird brains because it's all about content, and he likes people that have creative ideas. What quality in a person do you find thrives the best at iPullRank?
It's got to be people that are like super curious, because our space changes so much, and I'm not someone who's like, here's a step-by-step on how to do things. I'm more the person that's like, here's the idea, you use your expertise to figure out how to do the thing. So it requires like the curiosity, it requires someone that will do whatever it takes to get it done. And it requires someone that's like open to throwing out everything they knew before. You know what I mean? Like if you're like, it's only done this way, you're gonna have difficulty because, we may change the entire way that we do it for this one situation.
What's the next prediction or even controversial belief that you hold about where AI search is headed in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what is happening now is not gonna make it to then. And what I mean by that is like a lot of these software companies aren't gonna be able to keep up. A lot of these people that were living off of affiliate revenue are not gonna continue to exist. The publishers are going to have a lot of difficulty right now. And they're either going to have to like figure out a new way to monetize or change their ad agreements or whatever so that they're making more money with less clicks and impressions. But yeah, I think the web as we know it, like the Google shaped web, is going to change. And when I say Google shaped, like so much content exists the way that it does because of Google. Like you do things in a certain way in hopes that you will drive search traffic. And with how referral traffic works changing, it's just going to change what everyone is doing. And a lot of these sites are just not going to be around in 3 to 5 years. Also, a lot of these SEOs aren't going to make it through either because they just can't evolve quick enough.
You were asked in an older interview that if somebody switched lives with you, what would they experience? And your response was, they can't, just from the sheer fact that what I do with my time would take them several lifetimes to understand, let alone master.
Oh man, younger me is amazing.
Can you explain that a little bit about like what your work ethic is like? I see you doing a million things. You mentioned one time delegate is the key.
No, I'm actually not that great at delegation. I think I probably just said that because that's what you're supposed to say. I'm getting better at it now. Like now that I have more people that can own things for delegating. But my life is basically just triage. You know what I mean? I'm like, what's the most important thing I should be doing at any given moment? The thing is, I'm just like a high functioning person. So I do have high throughput. Like there's a lot that I do, but it's nowhere near the amount of things that I want to do. So I always feel like I'm not living up to my own expectations. And that continues to fuel me to do more things. But yeah, there's definitely a graveyard of unfinished projects with me for sure.
Well, you could probably be like 2, 3 times more productive and still feel that way.
Yeah, probably. I think, it's just so intrinsic into me to perform in anything that I do. Like, even if you think about, when I do performances, it's always like, how can I stand out? Like, that's how I ended up starting to do that blindfold freestyle thing. Cause it's like, I need a thing because, when you got like these shows when it's like 10 guys rapping and everyone's just rapping good, like, what is the difference? You know what I mean? Like, even though I would think that I'm better because of my technical skills and things I talk about, to the person watching it, it is the same. And so I'm always motivated to do something different, better, more impactful in anything that I'm doing.
It's been 12 years before Iconic that you had released anything. What's different about creating, Iconic now after that you've been running your own business, you have a family now?
I mean, what's different is I only want to do it if it's going to be right, you know? Like before I used to have to do anything, right? Like take all the shows that would pay me or any rapper that wanted to pay me to do a song, like you got to do it. Now I just do it when I want to do it. And so I actually had this experience. So for SEO Week, which is our conference, we had a concert and Busta Rhymes was the headliner. And I'm doing the show and it's going really well. It's like probably one of the best shows I've ever done. And I realized like, I don't want to have to win over crowds anymore. Like, I don't want to walk in, you not know me, and I have to prove to you that I can rap. So I'm like, what needs to happen so I don't have to do that anymore? And I'm like, oh yeah, I need a hit record. So my goal now is like, okay, let's make hit records. And so where I started with that was, I was like, okay, who can I get to, like, who makes hits that I can like reach? And so I got with Scott Storch, and I got a couple records right now that, I think will resonate in that way. And so I don't want to doing shows at like holes in a wall for like 10 people. Like, I want to do rap the way that I imagined it could be. You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna make a song that I'm not happy with. I'm not gonna put it out. I'm not gonna, do Chitlin circuit tours like I used to. I am only going to do what I imagine. Otherwise, it's not worth my time.
What's the story behind linking up with Scott Storch, and describe the sessions that you've been having?
Yeah. So with the whole idea of making the hit record, I hit up M80, who I've been working with in a variety of capacities. And I was like, yo, who can we get? He was like, oh, what about Hit Boy? What about Scott Storch? I was like, yeah, Scott Storch. So he connected me with Steve Lobel, who set up the session. I flew out to Miami, and yo, the dude's crib is insane. Like, he lives in this one building, I'm not gonna say which building, where you can park your car in your living room, basically. Like, he's on the 42nd floor and his car is like in the living room. I mean, there's like a glass wall where you can see it that separates it, but it's like a whole elevator and whatever. And it was such a wild experience because, like every 30 minutes, something crazy happens or someone shows up, and, he's like, he's a genius, but he doesn't just like sit there and bang the beat out. He'll sit there, knock out a part, and then like the phone will ring and he'll go talk to somebody famous, and then like he'll come back and he'll be like, yo, you want smoke? And then like a whole hour can go by before he goes back to the piano. And then I'll be like, yo, what about this? And he'll be like, oh, word. And then he'll fuck with it again. Or he'll tell you like the wildest story about like, yeah, when I was doing this with Eve, or when I was like in the Roots and we did this, and like it's a completely overwhelming experience, right? It's dope, and it's the one that I think is gonna be the real hit. I appreciate him for even working with us and all that. And at one point, he's like, "Yo, you guys want grilled cheese?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like after all this, yeah, I would love a grilled cheese. So he makes the grilled cheese. It's one of the most banging grilled cheeses I've ever had.
So to wrap it up, about 20 years ago, you said, ideally, I'd like to get to a point where I've built myself as such a well-known name brand that I can afford to release everything myself. I would also like to help out MCs that I believe are incredible, that are in the same position that I'm in. You're there now. Like, you can do whatever you want. You're
Yeah.
in the studio with the people that you create with, your closest friends. So now that you're in that position, what's next? What's your vision?
I mean, it's exactly what I said 20 years ago, right? Like, so where I want to go ultimately is have my own version of Rock Nation. And I don't mean that I want to like copy what Jay-Z has done. What I mean is that I want to have a conglomerate of companies that do all the things I'm interested in. So one of them would be like a software company. One of them would probably be like a creative agency or whatever. And then one of them, of course, would be like a record label. And so like we're starting the beginnings of that now, right? With the records I'm doing. And, Minnie and I are working on records. Haas and I are working on records. Um, I've been having discussions with guys like Tone Deaf and, all of our crew. Like what do we want to do? How do we get there? And I'm not saying like, oh, I'm gonna sign Tone Deaf. Like Tone Deaf is his own entity. He does what he does. He's a genius in his own right. But I do want to be able to like support what all my friends are doing and helping us cross that chasm from a marketing perspective. Because, you know, most of my generation of rappers don't want to do the whole social media thing, making skits and shit so that they can grow their platforms. And, you may not need to do that, but you do need to do marketing. And that's something that I'm world class at. So I want to bring that back to the people I love and appreciate and help us all achieve what it is that, we always wanted to do. I think that when we were younger, we may have put ourselves in boxes that were too small for the dreams that we have. And I think that there is an opportunity for us to go beyond that. Like, there's no reason that I can't have a hit record. There's no reason Tone Deaf can't have a hit record. It is literally make a song that people like and then promote the shit out of it. It's not that hard.
Very good. Mike, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I don't know, tap in. We're doing things out here.